Part 117. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 1163. Doesn't he know that Xiao Yazan usually does the job of killing people without blinking an eye? If this supreme list compares the number of kills, Xiao Yazan will definitely be ranked in the top 3. This is probably how you seek your own death. Others may not kill him on the supreme hidden dragon battlefield, but the lawless Xiao Yazan is very likely to. Xiao Yazan is already close to the top 10. The 11th ranked divine king in the entire supreme dragon clan. What is this concept? There are really not many people who can compare with him. I heard that he was reluctant to become the god king in order to get more resources in Zilong Academy. If he wanted to, he could become the god king at any time. There are too many legends about this person. In the past, they may not like Xiao Yazan, a terrifying existence, but now they like him for no reason. Hearing that Zhang Zizai had returned, he directly challenged Xiao Yazan. The number of people on the supreme hidden dragon battlefield increased again. After that, more and more ancestral Dragon Academy disciples rushed over. The more people there were, the more serious some people were. It's excitement, because as long as the time is right, everyone can still be encouraged to send Zhang Zizai to the west for real. Facing Zhang Zizai's letter of challenge, Xiao Yazan had nothing to say. He barely hesitated at all. He just smiled coldly, then walked out and headed to the fighting platform. Then he got on the fighting platform before Zhang Zizai, with a pair of eagles. Looking at Zhang Zizai with cold eyes, he said, "Come up and lead him to death." His tone was very calm, but it had an irresistible domineering and magical tone. Zhang Zizai knew something about this person. He was indeed an extraordinary person, stronger than Huangfu Feng. He had a God King level totem weapon in his hand, called the Heaven-Slaying Sword. Unfortunately, he couldn't use it today because he and Zhang Zizai had there is too much age difference. But even if he doesn't use the Tianzi sword, he is still much scarier than Huangfu Feng. After all, his title of One Kill the Demon King was not obtained entirely by relying on the Tianzi sword. In his hands, many people will basically die with one move. As for the potential of the gods and the bloodline of the Supreme Dragon, they are standard for this position on the Supreme list. Xiao Yazan was so powerful in people's hearts that they felt pity for Zhang Zizai for choosing him as his challenger. However, they found that Zhang Zizai was not afraid at all. Under Xiao Yazan's pressure, he went straight onto the fighting stage and fought against Xiao Yazan. This makes people feel frightened by the fact that the One/Demon King is standing together. That's really stupid, Xiao Yazan spat. He was used to defeating his opponents with one move. Even if he couldn't use the Skyzanting sword, he still took out the top-level god-level weapon called the Black Sky Demonic Sword. At this time, he was holding the Black Sky Demon Sword, his eyes were locked on Zhang Zizai, and he suddenly smiled slyly and said, "Counting from the moment I take action, you will be a corpse after 3 breaths." This is his style, fast, ruthless and accurate, with a single move that will never leave the enemy any hope of survival. In the process of speaking, his totem appeared and surrounded him. It was a huge black divine dragon. Its most obvious feature was that there was a single horn on its forehead. The single horn was very huge, almost 1/3 of its body length. It was not only huge and sharp, but completely like a blade. This is the totem of the sky-tearing giant horned demonic dragon. That huge horn can completely tear apart the heaven and the earth. This is actually a spatial ability, which is definitely much stronger than the infinite space. It is said to be able to split everything. Then, he took action. The moment he took action, everyone held their breath. In fact, it was quite interesting to watch Xiao Yazan fight. Fights with him were often very rough and ended in an instant, and the results could be seen in an instant. Buzz. At this moment, he used the Black Sky Demon Sword, accompanied by the sky-tearing giant horned demonic dragon. Suddenly, the move exploded, and the space between Zhang Zizai was directly shattered, leaving a huge gap. The power of that sword is indeed terrifying. If it weren't for the time reverse dragon formation, it would be even more terrifying. In addition, with the God King level totem weapon, it would be even more heaven-defying. Unfortunately, he met the current Zhang Zizai. At some point, Zhang Zizai suddenly disappeared from his sight. He didn't know when. Suddenly there was a terrifying pressure above his head. When he looked up, he was shocked to see a pair of huge purple flame wings behind Zhang Zizai. The flame wings were burning, making him fly rapidly in the air. Fly quickly, and then strike down with one move. This was the 4th level of the 5 Emperors Dragon Seal. It was bombarded head-on. In the light of the carbide fire, Xiao Yizhan was defeated on the spot. He was shocked to the point of bleeding from all his orifices. First, his face was pale and dull, and he knelt on the ground, and then he was blasted. He fell down with a sound, but before he even hit the ground, Zhang Zizai was kicked out. Snap! When Xiao Yizhan fell outside and lay motionless, the entire Supreme Hidden Dragon battlefield was completely silent. Even the sound of a silver needle falling to the ground could be heard in such a large area. Zhang Zizai just landed on the ground easily as if he had done something trivial. He really felt that such an opponent would be almost no challenge. After all, he was already at the 3rd level of the Divine King realm. The other party's qualifications are very strong, but compared with talent? Sorry, it seems a long way off. Over the years, Zhang Zizai's progress was unprecedented. You're blowing so hard, so you're vulnerable. Zhang Zizai shook his head. He didn't speak loudly, but because the place was so quiet, many people heard him. However, no one seemed to think he was arrogant. He just said what he should say at this time. Now people's heads are full of question marks. What happened to Xiao Yizhan today? Is he poisoned? The main thing they couldn't understand was this. No matter how they looked at it, Zhang Zizai couldn't crush him so easily. He killed the Demon King with one blow, but his opponent was defeated with one blow. How ridiculous it sounded. But when Xiao Yizhan got up and was extremely weak, seeing his irritable and painful expression, people had to think clearly that Xiao Yizhan definitely didn't mean it. He seemed to have exerted his strength. Then all this could only mean, Zhang Zizai's horror. At this moment, it can be said that many people looked at him with fear. On the Supreme List, the Dragon God King swapped their rankings. Now Zhang Zizai's ranking is already 11th. Above him are the top 10 most glorious names on the Supreme List. Each name is very huge and shining. Now Zhang Zizai can be said to be the highest position in the Holy Dragon clan. It is absolutely cool, because the name of the Holy Dragon clan has 9 colors, which is different from the 4 Supreme Dragon clans. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 1164. The 11th place can be said to be very dazzling, because there are tens of thousands of names on the Supreme List. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Xiao Yizhan got up. He looked at Zhang Zizai with the most hatred. Today he had become a stepping stone. He could only leave silently. No one paid attention to him at this moment because he was no longer dazzling. He was the defeated general. It's even become a joke. Just as speechless as him were Huang Fufeng and the others. At this time, they looked at each other, and they knew how complicated their hearts were. Of course, they knew that Xiao Yizhan had used all his strength, but losing so miserably could only mean that Zhang Zizai had improved again. We can still make progress and gain blessings. If this continues, will there be an end? Therefore, when they looked at Zhang Zizai again, even if they refused to admit it, there was trembling in their eyes. It's just that Zhang Zizai didn't pay attention to them at all. What he was looking at now was the top 10 on the Supreme List. Only the top 10 was his real goal. The only pity is that none of the top 10 names are shining, which means that they are not here. Even if they have to declare a challenge, they have to wait until they are willing to accept the challenge. At this time, the heavenly dragon god king stood up and asked Zhang Zizai in public, "You have become the 11th. According to the rules, you have one chance to challenge the top 10 within a year. As long as you don't lose, you can continue to challenge, until the top of the list. Once you lose, you will not be able to challenge within a year, so do you want to make a challenge to the top 10? Zhang Zizai knew that the challenge rules for the top 10 on the supreme list were different from others. This was also a way to protect the top 10 from being harassed all the time. What the heavenly dragon god king just said was the top 10 challenge rules. As a challenger outside the top 10, you can use the challenge opportunity once within a year. As long as you can win, you can continue to challenge upwards. The ranking when you lose is the challenger's final ranking. Yes, I want to declare a challenge. Zhang Zizai hardly hesitated. Yes. According to the regulations, the 10th person on the supreme list will respond to you within a month. If nothing unexpected happens, he must accept the challenge the heavenly dragon god king announced. It definitely won't work today. After all, the top 10 on the supreme list are special and different from the previous challenges. Zhang Zizai took a look and saw that he was 10th on the supreme list, named Bailey Mufeng, from the immortal dragon celestial clan. There is only one ranking difference between him and Xiao Yazan. Xiao Yazan must have challenged him, but he definitely failed. It is said that the level of the top 10 is very different from the others, and the battle rules of the top 10 are also different. In the top 10 challenge battles, you can use any weapon, as long as you can control it, it's no problem. Therefore, among the top 10, there may be a difference in age from Zhang Zizai, but they can still use their God King level weapons. Zhang Zizai has certain disadvantages in terms of weapons, so it shouldn't be as easy as dealing with Xiao Yazan. However, this will never stop him from taking on the challenge, because this time, he wants to practice in the best place in the entire Zilong Academy, which is much better than the Hidden Dragon Sea. Among the top 10 training places on the Supreme List, it is definitely the most special place of Zilong Academy. At the beginning, when the Heavenly Dragon God King described Zhang Zizai, the top 10 are all practicing in the Ancestral Dragon Pagoda. The Ancestral Dragon Pagoda is the core of the Ancestral Dragon Academy and the core of the Ancestral Dragon Guardian Totem Array. Its sources are as the origin of the Shenlong clan is extremely ancient. There are 10 levels in the Ancestral Dragon Tower. Each person in the top 10 occupies one level. The higher up, the more profound the fortune. Among them, the number 1 on the Supreme List corresponds to the 10th level of the Ancestral Dragon Tower. That place can be said to be a place where any God King would like to practice. What many people don't know is that the Ancestral Dragon Tower is actually a heavenly artifact like the 9 Dragons Chaos Divine Bell, and it is also the supreme among the heavenly artifacts in the entire Dragon Sacrifice God realm. It is the super secret treasure of the entire Supreme Dragon clan. It is just too practical to use it. It is too difficult. It is said that the Ancestral Dragon Pagoda has never had any master. So far, only the whole clan can reach the power of the Ancestral Dragon Pagoda, but it is enough to protect the entire Supreme Dragon clan. Of course, this is actually a secret. Not many people know. Everything about the Zilong Pagoda naturally increased Zhang Zizai's yearning for the Zilong Pagoda. Anyway, they are back. They are risking their lives to practice in this Ancestral Dragon Academy. They must be as fast as possible and get everything they can enjoy and get. Only in this way will the risk here be worth it, so Zhang Zizai will not be polite next time. He can also see that it is not because he keeps a low profile and makes peace with others that he can be safe. Now, right and wrong have no meaning. They will only remember, the Chaos Demon realm is now out of control, leaving them in crisis, and it's all their own fault. Once Bailey Mufeng, who is ranked 10th, takes up the challenge, the other top 10 players will also be present that day. They are all forced to come because challengers outside the top 10 challenge upwards, and there is a possibility that they can pass all the way. So every time the top 10 challenge is very lively, it has been done more than a dozen times before, but all of them failed, said the heavenly dragon god king. In fact, such rules have something to do with the ancestral dragon pagoda. When cultivating in the ancestral dragon pagoda, you often find the key point, and once you practice, you will enter a state where the key point cannot be disturbed. Because of this, the disciples in the ancestral dragon pagoda are always, except for the days when I was challenged more than a dozen times a year, I was free the rest of the time. When the time comes for the top 10 to challenge, they must confirm whether everyone is not in a critical state, otherwise the day will have to be moved later. There is another difference in the top 10 challenges, that is, you definitely cannot challenge the first place directly from the 11th place. To enter the top 10, you must fight the 10th place. Once you succeed, you will become the 10th. The next challenge can only jump 2 places at most. For example, if you are the 10th, you can challenge the 7th at most, and you can jump over the 9th and 8th in the middle. If you are the 7th, you can challenge the 4th at most. If you are the 4th, you can challenge the 1st at most. And if the top 10 lose, they will not fall out of the top 10, but will move back in order. For example, if you defeat the 7th, you will occupy the 7th place, and the 7th will become the 8th. The others will move back 1 place. The 9th will become the 10th. If Zhang Zizai wants to reach the top of the supreme list, the fastest speed is to defeat 4 people, namely the 10th, 7th, 4th and 1st. But in fact, many people dare not do this, because there are reasons why they can stay on a certain floor of Zilong Tower. Each floor of Zilong Tower will be much better, but if the challenge fails, there will be no chance for a year. Therefore, this kind of bold challenge is not carried out by ordinary people. Even if they succeed in challenging the 10th floor by chance, they should challenge the 9th and 8th floors. No one is so bold. The key is that no one has succeeded in challenging the 10th floor so far. The 10th floor can be said to be a very busy position. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Feng Qing Yang. Chapter 1165. So now Zhang Zizai can only leave, and then go back to wait for the arrangements from the ancestral dragon tower. The heavenly dragon god king will handle this matter for him, so he doesn't have to worry. However, after this appearance, the heavenly dragon god king suggested that he go to his dragon sacrifice palace. Forget it, it's safer over there, and then wait for the challenge day to work hard and get on as many as you can on the ancestral dragon tower. As for the information on the top 10 on the supreme list, he would definitely study it for Zhang Zizai in advance. He only said one thing: even if you defeat Xiao Yazan quickly, you can't take the top 10 lightly. These are the top 10 of the Supreme Dragon Clan. The most evil gods have many special features, including the potential of gods, the bloodline of the Supreme Dragon, and the totem weapons of God Kings. These are the most basic. Of course Zhang Zizai will not underestimate the enemy, but he is also fearless. Anyway, even if he loses, there is no loss. Even if he defeats one person, he will enter the ancestral dragon tower. For this magical and shocking ancestral dragon tower, he will naturally enter first. Say it again. In this way, the heavenly dragon god king took Zhang Zizai and left in full view of everyone. In fact, he didn't seem to be here to challenge today, but to challenge the top 10. Xiao Yazan did not cause him any harm at all. Trouble. Many people can only watch Zhang Zizai leave. Although Zhang Zizai is not within the time reverse dragon formation, Zhang Zizai is already very fragile, but he is protected by the heavenly dragon god king, and there is no opportunity like last time. Some people still want to encourage others, but not so easy. Although their hatred was raging, this group of people could only watch Zhang Zizhe leave, and then they had to spread the news for Zhang Zizhe that he was going to challenge the top 10. Zhang Zizhe didn't seem to be a big shot, but now he also shocked the Zilong Academy again. Obviously, when the time comes to challenge for the top 10, there will be no crowds. Zhang Zizhe didn't think too much. He didn't need to pay attention to what Huang Fufeng and the others thought or how they would feel. He only needed to follow the heavenly dragon god king back to the dragon sacrifice palace and wait for the news. As expected, the response to the message was very fast. On the third day after he defeated Xiao Yazan, the heavenly dragon god king brought back the news. There was already a response from the ancestral dragon tower. Taking into account the time of the top 10 on the supreme list, they agreed to accept Zhang Zizhe in 10 days. Challenge. 10 days is too short, and there is nothing to prepare for. For many god kings, it is just a snap of the fingers and they can wait with peace of mind. There was obviously an uproar outside, and there would definitely be a huge crowd of people by then. There were discussions everywhere. After all, the way he defeated Xiao Yazan was too rough, enough to arouse the vigilance of the top 10 on the supreme list. But for them, maybe this was more of a battle of dignity. After all, it was an insult to their abilities to allow Zhang Zizhe, a rising young man from the small divine realm, to be in the top 10 of the supreme list. At this time, they will definitely become more exclusive. Sometimes, excellence in birth and status is a sin in itself. Those arrogant people will not admit Zhang Zizhe, unless one day Zhang Zizhe easily tramples them under his feet. In the past few days, what made Zhang Zizhe more aware of his worrying situation in the dragon sacrifice god realm was that the three of them, Long Yan, were all teleported back by the Qinqin shifting talisman one after another. None of the three of them were people who would take the initiative to provoke other people. They were all suddenly besieged. If it weren't for the Qinqin shifting talisman, they would probably be dead. It seems that the hatred of these young people towards you is beyond expectation. These idiots only look for weak people to vent their anger. Each one is more coward than the other, the heavenly dragon god king said with disdain. Then we can still survive here, Zhang Zizhe asked. Maybe, for example, your ranking on the supreme list is dazzling enough, and your true dragon heart spreads, so that the supreme dragon clan has to pay attention to you. Moreover, it is difficult for them to kill you, because if they kill you, they may the gods have been laughed at by other gods because they cannot handle the matter of the immortal lord. They will be laughed at even more if they don't even have the courage to cultivate a younger generation of geniuses. After receiving the guidance from the heavenly dragon god king, Zhang Zizhe finally knew where his direction was. He still needs to be good enough. As for Lu Dingxing and the three of them, it doesn't matter. They come to the dragon god realm anyway to mix and mingle as much as they can. Anyway, no matter how they practice here, they are better than the little god realm. Only Long Yan can get some luck here alone. The other two still rely on Zhang Zizhe. As long as Zhang Zizhe is strong, they can't be far behind. So if they don't go out for a short period of time, it won't do them any harm. When the appointed day comes, the heavenly dragon god king will take all four of them with him and then go to the supreme hidden dragon battlefield. Today, in order to maintain order, all the dragon sacrificial masters from the entire ancestral dragon academy will be dispatched. You don't have to worry about the process. You only need to show yourself, because Dragon Lord Aoki will also come to see you. You are the opportunity I have fought for you to show off. Zhang Zizhe said. Understood, Zhang Zizhe's blood boiled. He didn't expect that today would be so grand. Maybe the Zilong Academy has never been so grand since it was rebuilt. All the dragon sacrificial masters have arrived, and even the faceless palace master has appeared. How could the other disciples from the ancestral dragon academy not come to watch the battle? Even before Zhang Zizhe arrived, he could already hear the roar of people over there. Looking around, you can see the black heads. At a glance, you can tell that there are tens of thousands of disciples of the Ancestral Dragon Academy. In other words, the entire Ancestral Dragon Academy's people are now gathered at the Supreme Hidden Dragon battlefield. It is obvious that here it was impossible for everyone to challenge the top 10 before, but there was no such movement. At this moment, everyone is watching. He's here. Zhang Zizai. From the moment the first person's voice was heard, tens of thousands of eyes were fixed on Zhang Zizai. Most of them were indeed vicious and hateful, and they hoped to use this method to give Zhang Zizai a warning. Bastard from the small divine domain. Sinful idiot. Today is your death anniversary. Before he arrived, someone started to curse directly, but just after he finished speaking, he was slapped unconscious by a dragon priest. After all, King Mu Dragon Lord is about to arrive, so it's better not to say more about this kind of words that can easily drive away geniuses. Although many people didn't say it, they all had the same idea. If Zhang Zizai was born here, it would be fine, and it would be better if he was a pure-blooded one of the 4 supreme dragons. His ignorance about the matter between him and the immortal master could be forgiven, but he was an outsider. Who could believe that he would fight for the Supreme Dragon clan? Now, it's just accepting the challenge of outsiders and humble people. The geniuses of the Supreme Dragon clan, be ready. Among them, there are too many enemies of Zhang Zizai, such as Bai Mu in the past, such as Huangfu Chong and the Huangfu family behind him, the Xianlong Mu family, and even Tuabaxia and Xiao Yazan. It's just a pity that they are not qualified to talk to Zhang Zizai at this time. And Zhang Zizai, taking the lead, fell in front of the heroes. When he raised his head, there was no fear in his eyes. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 1166. At this moment, Zhang Zizai felt like he was alone, facing a huge army. Although there were people who supported him, they were only a few. Even so, this did not affect his fighting spirit at all. Anyway, the Supreme Dragon clan had never accepted him, and he did not need to waste his energy on these people. The more people hated him, the more he would be motivated and eager to fight. The Zilong Academy had never been so lively, especially after Zhang Zizai's arrival. It was like an explosion. If there were not enough dragon priests present, they would probably cause chaos again. In fact, Zhang Zizai was wrong. If he was mediocre, it would be fine, but he was so outstanding. Now everyone knows that he got the son of the 3 great heavenly artifacts and the forbidden dragon god phase, and Long Yan also got the mirror god phase. How could he not be envied? Everything was because of jealousy. Saying other things seemed high-sounding. For example, it was certain that Zhang Zizai would betray in the future. Would the Supreme Dragon clan, which was so big, show and kill him because of fear of traitors? It would be a joke if it got out. The Supreme Dragon clan has a face. The more jealous you are, the more twisted your heart becomes. They are still in a standoff because King Mu Dragon Lord has not arrived yet, but Zhang Zizai did not wait for long. Almost less than 10 breaths after he arrived, King Mu Dragon Lord appeared. He still looked old and amiable, and his temperament was completely different from that of Guangming Dragon Lord. He did not have any obvious preference. He smiled at everyone, unlike some dragon sacrifice masters who had obvious positions. After all, among the 4 supreme dragon clans, 3 clans had dragon lords killed in battle, and the others also had god kings killed in battle. Those god kings might have friends of the dragon sacrifice masters present. They just transferred this hatred to Zhang Zizai. After all, they could not do anything in this Zilong Academy. It can begin. King Mu Dragon Lord gave an order, and the Supreme Hidden Dragon battlefield, which had been silent for a moment, boiled again. At this moment, Zhang Zizai did not hesitate. Today he was the challenger and the champion. He did not care about the round-robin battle, so he directly boarded the largest battle platform in the Supreme Hidden Dragon battlefield and stood on it. This position was high above, but looking at the disciples of the Zilong Academy below, most of them looked up at Zhang Zizai with extremely vicious eyes. The 10th place on the Supreme list, Bailey Muafeng, please. Zhang Zizai did not know where he was, but he knew that after he said this person would definitely appear. Sure enough, in the midst of the boiling, everyone looked at a position, and the person being stared at walked out of the crowd calmly, then lightly boarded the anti-time dragon formation and appeared in front of Zhang Zizai. Bailey Muafeng. Kill this bastard. For a while, the crazy shouting began to sweep. If only one person said it, it would soon be drowned out. But now at least half of the people are shouting. Zhang Zizai saw that people like Huang Fufeng and Mu Xiaoxian couldn't help shouting a few words. It seemed that their hatred and murderous intentions towards Zhang Zizai had long been impossible to ease. In the agitated heat wave, Zhang Zizai ignored those fierce eyes, stood still, and looked at his opponent. In the past few days, he could say that he had studied all the people who might challenge him, and Bailey Muafeng was the first one. Now, at first glance, it was found that this man from the Xianlongtian clan was so beautiful. He could almost be described as bright eyes, white teeth, and skin like cream. His face was as beautiful as a flower, and his body was slender and delicate. If it weren't for the Adam's apple, he would probably be like a beauty of the generation. And let's not say, if he dressed up as a woman, he could definitely be mistaken for a real person, even better looking than Mu Xiaoxian. Especially the pair of dark blue eyes, which are like the starry sky at night, bright and vast, which completely adds the finishing touch to his handsome appearance. To be frank, he is really a peerless handsome man, and there may be many people who like him. As one of the top 10 on the Supreme list, he was challenged, but he never failed once, which shows his strength and talent, and his top popularity can be seen. When he appeared, many girls cheered for him with screams. The information shows that Bailey Muafeng is not much older than Zhang Zizai. His current realm is the 7th level of the God Lord. When he was Zhang Zizai's age, he should be around the 5th level of the God Lord realm, which is already the realm limit of Zhang Zizai at this age. Outside the anti-time dragon formation, Bailey Muafeng is probably not the opponent of Huang Fufeng, Mu Xiaoxian and others, but inside the anti-time dragon formation, Bailey Muafeng can deal with them just like cutting melons and vegetables. When facing Zhang Zizai, the man's eyes were cold, as if through frost. He was the kind of person who was spotless, with white clothes fluttering, very pure, so clean that people felt ashamed of themselves. In contrast, Zhang Zizai looked a little dark compared to him. Let's get started, don't waste time. Bailey Muafeng looked disgusted. He stood far away and didn't seem to want to get close to Zhang Zizai. Of course, he didn't underestimate his opponent. He had seen the image of Zhang Zizai defeating Xiao Yazan and had a little understanding of his strength, but this was not enough to scare him. While he was talking, a long sword appeared in his hand. It was a blue long sword, dotted with stars, with tens of thousands of starlight points shining in it, shining brightly. When he waved the long sword, it was like waving a galaxy. Wherever the galaxy went, the world trembled and everything was lonely. This is the totem weapon of the God King level, the 10,000 stars sky sword. Even among the God King level, it is an extremely rare weapon, and Bailey Muafeng can exert its strong power. On the other hand, Zhang Zizai has no God King level weapon at all. His heavenly dragon sacrifice divine halberd was once a God King level, but now it only has 1/10 of its power. It can at least kill more than 2,000 God Lords, but where are there more than 2,000 God Lords for him to kill? After the 10,000 stars sky sword, it is his totem god. A snow-white dragon phantom appeared on the left and right of his body, coiling it up, the combination of man and dragon, especially holy. The dragon scales of the snow-white dragon immediately appeared with starlight spots. There were about 3,000 dragon scales in total, and about 3,000 azure starlight appeared. This is the 3,000 star domain immortal dragon totem. The Bailey family of the Xianlong celestial clan is a family of the star Xianlong and the overlord of the Xianlong celestial clan. Their status is much higher than that of the Xianlong Mu family. As the first person under the God King of the Bailey family, Bailey Muafeng is the best in every aspect. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Feng Qing Yang. Chapter 1167. The potential of a god and the blood of the supreme dragon are just the foundation. Even if he is only at the 5th level of the god realm under the anti-time dragon formation, with these many resources, he may be able to defeat those ordinary gods at the 6th and 7th levels. Zhang Zizai also knew that the top 10 on the supreme list did not change much in terms of realm, but the reason why they were distinguished and could be in this position was because they all had many unknown assets like himself. Bailey Muafeng was one of them. At this time, he had the protection of 3,000 star domain fairy dragons and the 10,000 star sky sword. His body and soul had been strengthened with very high intensity. Now his eyes were cold and he entered the state of fighting, as cold as a sword. But before that, Zhang Zizai had already taken action. His move was very simple. Now he had the son of the 3 great heavenly artifacts, which was a very important support. First, he could use the platinum bell to cover himself. Secondly, his purple fire wings had the triple effects of attack, defense, and speed increase. Then the chaotic lightning increased the terrifying speed. The combination of the 3, combined with Zhang Zizai's holy dragon body, can be said to have greatly increased his combat ability. Not to mention, the forbidden dragon god directly suppressed the opponent's 3,000 star domain fairy dragons by 1 level, so that only part of its ability could be exerted. The opponent's dragon totem was originally able to create 3,000 cages to block Zhang Zizai, but now his 3,000 star domain cages have decreased a lot in power, and the restrictions on Zhang Zizai are not in place. If it weren't for this reverse time dragon formation, Zhang Zizai estimated that he couldn't even break through the first star domain cage and was at the mercy of others. The two finally killed each other in the spotlight. Zhang Zizai turned into a black vortex in the chaos-swallowing sky dragon, absorbing a large amount of sword energy from the opponent's endless flying star sky sword technique, and Zhang Zizai rushed out in an instant, with 300 dragons rushing to kill with the Kangtian sacrifice dragon divine halberd in his hand. He integrated the power of time and space of the God King Totem into it, and it burst out in an instant, and the ancient God Source power of destruction God Source was unstoppable. He himself was already the 3rd level of the God King realm, and the opponent's totem god was suppressed to only the 4th level. This gap can be solved by the ancient God Source power of destruction God Source itself. Even if the opponent has a God King level totem weapon, it is nothing to Zhang Zizai. This is still a crushing. No matter how confident Bailey Muafeng was before the battle, at this moment, the black vortex tore his totem god image into pieces. Zhang Zizai came up directly and broke through his defense with the burst of the 5 Emperors' dragon seal. With a fast and accurate palm, he knocked the opponent away. In an instant, he flew out of the reverse dragon formation. The majestic force made him roll on the ground for several rounds. The snow-white clothes were stained with blood and mud, and he didn't look so pure and elegant. This battle also started quickly and ended very quickly. Zhang Zizai basically showed no mercy and sent the opponent out of the top 10 of the supreme list. And his 10th place will be enjoyed by Zhang Zizai in the future. His goal of the ancestral dragon tower has been completed, but next, he wants to stand higher in the ancestral dragon tower. Just like when he went to the beast god tower with her, the time was very wonderful, but now only he is left. At this time, Bailey Muafeng was still struggling to get up from the ground. He seemed to have no idea that he had been defeated. All this happened in the blink of an eye. It was very embarrassing to be defeated like this, so he was naturally unwilling to accept it. so it can be seen that he wanted to wait for the battle stage again to fight to the death with Zhang Zizai. But defeat is defeat. The dragon sacrifice master of his Bailey family stopped him, so he couldn't continue to embarrass himself. If you lose, you lose. Admit it. Fight back later, the dragon sacrifice master said, but he knew that he was talking nonsense. Facing someone younger than himself in the supreme hidden dragon battlefield, if he lost, he would have no chance in the future, because he was fighting Zhang Zizai in the past, and the future of the past was now. Ah, Bailey Muofeng roared unwillingly. His face was a little ferocious, which was somewhat different from the gentlemanly look just now. He stared at Zhang Zizai, his heart was full of resentment, and he didn't look so spotless. But the funny thing is that he still had to go back obediently. Because no one wants to see him messing around. Just now he was a favored child, but now he is a waste. He lost to Zhang Zizai and could not fulfill people's wish to kill Zhang Zizai. No matter how romantic he is, he will be thrown aside at this time. Because he made tens of thousands of people feel aggrieved. The feeling of being crushed and defeated by Zhang Zizai is like eating dog shit. No matter how much they envy Bailey Muofeng at other times, they actually want him to get out of the way at this time. But now Zhang Zizai is even more of a headache for them. He is so amazing that he has only taken more than a year to go from more than 300 to the top 10. Could it be that he really wants to go against the will of heaven? A sacred place like Zilong Tower actually let a bastard from a small divine domain enter. This is absolutely not allowed. I think we should propose it. Don't worry, he won't live to see that time. There are many people who want to kill him. Just watch, he will be killed if he goes out alone. What's your origin? He did such a big mistake, and he still wants to get so many of our resources. Their shouting and cursing will not stop, but it will not affect Zhang Zizai's mood at all. For Zhang Zizai, defeating the genius they rely on is the best response to these insults. He doesn't need to say a word, just prove it with strength. After Bailey Muofeng was eliminated, people were feeling frustrated, but King Mulongzun was still smiling happily. He actually asked Zhang Zizai, "Do you want to keep the 10th place, or do you want to continue challenging? If you continue challenging, which place do you want to challenge? You can choose the 7th, 8th, and 9th place, but remember to do it within your ability. The strength of the 7th, 8th, and 9th place may not be the same. In the top 10 of the Supreme list, the effect of each promotion is completely different. Because during this period, they practiced in the Zilong Tower and got completely different effects. The higher the level in the Zilong Tower, the greater the progress, and naturally the older and stronger they are. Although it does not affect them when they are in their 20s, the strength at this time is strong, and the improvement in many aspects can also be used in the reverse time dragon formation. Zhang Zizai's advantage is that he is younger than anyone else, so he can be unaffected by the reverse time dragon formation. After the reconstruction of Zilong Academy, the top 10 were determined after careful evaluation by the elders. After that, many challenges were carried out internally, but the rankings have not changed from beginning to end, proving that the internal hierarchy is very strict. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Feng Qing Yang. Chapter 1168. And Zhang Zizai is the first person to get involved in the top 10 of the Supreme list since the reconstruction of Zilong Academy. It seems that according to the rules of the previous generation of Zilong Academy, after entering the top 10, most people will be more cautious, as long as they are not 10th, no matter what. After all, 10th place is always a challenge, and there is a risk of leaving the Zilong Tower at any time. Challenging for 9th place is the safest way. Challenging the 8th place, if you can succeed, then the possibility of falling out of the ancestral dragon tower in the future is relatively small. Of course, there are also people who challenge the 7th place, which has the lowest chance of success, but once successful, basically they will not fall out of the ancestral dragon tower for a long time. After all, even if they are defeated, they will still be reduced to 8th place. As for who Zhang Zizhe will challenge, many people have an idea. Sure enough, under the spotlight, Zhang Zizhe said, "I choose to challenge the 7th place." Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. It sounds like this, and you know that his ambition today is not just 7th place. According to the rules, Zhang Zizhe can challenge for 7th place. When the words fell, the next battle was about to begin. The disciples of the Zilong Academy were once again supporting Zhang Zizhe's new opponent. Zhang Zizhe glanced at the high-ranking Supreme list. His name was now at the 10th place. The top 10 names were all very shining brightly. They were at the top of the Supreme list, and he could see all the mountains and small mountains at a glance. The third name from his name is obviously the name of a woman named Xiao Yeling. This is a black name, which means that she, like Xiao Yazan, comes from the demonic dragon celestial clan. Of course, Zhang Zizhe had heard about Xiao Yeling. His name was astonishing. It was said that he was one of the top 3 beauties in Zilong Academy. Even Mu Xiaoxian was only ranked 8th. It can be seen that this person ranked among the top 3. What a stunning beauty! However, Zhang Zizhe was biased in this ranking. There was no Yan'er among the top 10 beauties. This was clearly discrimination against Long Yan as coming from the small god realm. If he wanted to see her, Yan'er would definitely rank first. Of course, he has never really seen what level the top 3 are. He would see it soon. Xiao Yeling, who is ranked 7th on the Supreme list, is not an ordinary person. Her status is so noble that she can be said to be the top one in the entire Zilong Academy. There are no more than 5 people with the same status as her. Personal. Among the 5 Supreme Dragon clans, except for the Holy Dragon Celestial clan, which has not canonized a Dragon Emperor, the other 4 Supreme Dragon clans all have Dragon Emperors. For example, the Demon Dragon Celestial Emperor of the Demon Dragon Celestial clan, the Demon Dragon Celestial Emperor has been incomparably rescued for many years. He is the same as Zhang Zizhe. He has the form of a forbidden dragon. In his life, he has many descendants, most of whom are already god kings. 2 of them have become gods like him. Among them, the 2 youngest ones are still god kings, and one is on the Supreme list. Rank 7th on the list, and the other one ranked 2nd on the Supreme list. The person ranked 2nd was Xiao Yeling's younger brother. Zhang Zizhe had no time to pay attention because his ranking was not within Zhang Zizhe's challenge range. He is now mainly focused on the daughter of the demonic dragon emperor, who is ranked 7th on the Supreme list. It is really not easy for the demon dragon emperor to have such a young daughter at such an old age. Xiao Yeling's realm is also the 9th level of the Divine King realm, but everyone knows that she can become a Divine King now. She resists not becoming a Divine King because she just wants to practice in the ancestral dragon pagoda for a while and lay the foundation. In fact, there may be some god kings who are no match for her. In terms of real strength, Mu Xiaoxian, who is ranked 28th, is not worthy of carrying her shoes. Their status is not on the same level, and in terms of seniority, as a demon dragon, the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven, her seniority is at the level of the grandmother of many god kings. Comparing Xiao Yeling and Bailey Mufeng, there is also a big difference. Bailey Mufeng may be defeated, but Xiao Yeling basically has no chance of defeat, so when Zhang Zizhe chose to challenge Xiao Yeling, he mocked him jokingly, "There are too many daring people." Zhang Zizhe turned a deaf ear to all this. After all, the beauty named Xiao Yeling had already appeared in front of him. She was so stunning at first sight, so there was no time to look at other people. This is a tall woman wearing a black dress. She is cold, arrogant, and noble. Her long hair hangs down like a waterfall. Her figure is like a water snake, concave and convex. She is unparalleled in beauty. Her whole person is like a queen in the darkness, proud and domineering. She is used to it. The eyes of the superior looked at Zhang Zizai, as if he wanted to see through the person from beginning to end. Perhaps in her life, honor and authority are everything to her, so this person is completely different from Bailey Mufeng just now. I am afraid that many people feel ashamed under her alluring appearance. This is a kind of psychology. Under such pressure, no one dared to look obscenely at her seductive white skin, even if it was faintly revealed in her long black gauze skirt. In fact, her eyes and expression have a kind of frosty majesty, which is completely unapproachable, like a black flower in the ice and snow. Although it is delicate and unparalleled in beauty, it is scary, let alone to defile, even to touch it, is to worry about being torn into pieces. It seems like that beauty list is quite real, Zhang Zizai said with a sigh. Of course, he still thinks that this cold and arrogant frosty woman with her aloof and stinky face can be pretty. As long as the daughter of the demonic dragon emperor comes on stage, the battle can actually begin. Looking directly at each other, they were both sizing up each other, so there was a slight delay. Zhang Zizai passed through Xiao Yeling and saw a black-haired boy who looked very similar to Xiao Yeling. They were twins, a boy and a girl. It was said that they were born to the demon dragon emperor and a female god from his clan, so they had the same father and mother. In comparison, the black-haired boy was definitely more terrifying, because his eyes were deeper and colder, like the dead night, making it even more unpredictable. His name was Xuanhuan. Zhang Zizai didn't need to challenge him, so he only looked at him for a few times and then ignored him. But he could see that the boy must be extremely concerned about his sister's battle. After all, they grew up together and had been together since the beginning, but his sister was born a little earlier. Facing Zhang Zizai, Xiao Yeling only said one sentence, "Your bloodline is lowly and you are not qualified to enter the sacred Zilong Tower. You can stay in the 10th floor and wait for others to pull you down. Why bother to show off your ugliness?" "Who said I was showing off my ugliness? No one can be uglier than you. You are also in the top 3 of the beauty list. With your level, you can find a lot of people on the street." Zhang Zizai smiled. He knew that Xiao Yeling cared a lot about her appearance. She was happy to compete with others for beauty. She was already very resentful for being ranked 3rd. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Feng Qingyang. Chapter 1169. But her heart was calm enough. She just smiled coldly and didn't want to talk to Zhang Zizai. In fact, she even had murderous intentions in her heart, but she just didn't show it. It could be seen from her eyes that she hated Zhang Zizai very much. It is a kind of disgust that noble people have towards lowly people, as if fighting with this person would be a shame. Zhang Zizai asked himself that he was pretty good looking, but he received such disgusted looks, which was quite funny. However, he actually did not underestimate his opponent at all. He knew how strong Xiao Yeling was, and he also knew how much these tens of thousands wanted him to die in battle. Now these countless intense looks meant this, so he couldn't let it go. They got their wish. Black is their common color. One of them is dark and violent, and the other is dark, mysterious, and enchanting. The two of them seem to be a good match, and they are like firewood when they collide. Unfortunately, Xiao Yeling is too disgusted, and they are obviously not a good match. It's just that when the totem gods of the two were born, they were somewhat similar, because the reason why Xiao Yeling was powerful was because she inherited some characteristics of the forbidden dragon god from her father. In fact, her totem god Xiang also has the power of the forbidden dragon divine aspect. In previous confrontations with others, she suppressed them, but today she faced the real forbidden dragon divine aspect. She had inherited it, so after all she was just a little bit behind. But relatively speaking, the power of Zhang Zizai's forbidden dragon divine form has been weakened a bit, giving Xiao Yeling a lot of room to display. After coming to this time reverse dragon formation, her strength returned to the divine form. She is at the 5th level, but this does not prevent her from sacrificing the God King level totem weapon, the Dead Knight Demon Sword. It was a black long sword. There was a bloodline in the center of the long sword. This sword came from the darkness and merged into the darkness. It was obvious that she still had it in her hand, but in the blink of an eye it had disappeared before her eyes, and she was dead. The Night Demon Sword disappeared together with her. Her graceful and tall body disappeared directly into the darkness in front of Zhang Zizai, as if she had become invisible without a trace. Sure enough, none of the top 10 on the Supreme list is weak. This ability comes from her totem, the Eternal Night Emperor Demonic Dragon Totem. The Eternal Night Emperor Demonic Dragon was surrounding her at this moment, creating an eternal dark night, plunging the entire counter-time dragon formation into absolute darkness. This absolute darkness had nothing to do with eyesight, and was completely equivalent to I have lost my vision and can't see anything clearly. But in fact, only Zhang Zizai was trapped in the eternal dark night, and everyone else could see clearly. Then, Xiao Yeling used the Death Knight Demon Sword, the God King totem weapon, to start killing Zhang Zizai. The Dead Knight Demon Sword chi released by the Dead Knight Demon Sword is very terrifying, and its effect is quite ferocious. As long as a trace of it pierces into the body, it will immediately turn into a Dead Knight Demon insect and bite the enemy's body until it will eat all its internal organs until it is eaten. If the Dead Knight Devils cannot be eliminated in time, once the Dead Knight Devils increase in size, they can directly eat up a person in the middle of the battle. And Xiao Yeling used the Dead Knight Demon Sword to perform 1000 Knight Soul Shattering Sword Manual, 1000 swords in total. Each sword was quite terrifying. Between each sword, the sword energy was fierce, and countless Dead Knight Demon Swords the chi was everywhere, and Zhang Zizai, who had lost his vision, had no choice but to run away. It seemed that the opponent had completely suppressed him. It was only then that people saw hope from love and truly breathed a sigh of relief. However, they were not happy for long, because next, it was time for Zhang Zizai to fight back. Dark. He has never been afraid of darkness, because his black vortex is the real darkness that cannot be seen from the sky. If darkness is a kind of gas, then Zhang Zizai now uses the Chaos Sky-Swallowing Dragon to turn into a black vortex and block it in front of his body. Whether it is the Dead Knight Demon Sword chi or the darkness, he directly sucks it in. It seemed nothing at first. After all, this darkness was actually the magic dragon of the Eternal Night Emperor. It was as if this totem-like body was swallowed up by Zhang Zizai's black vortex. As time went on, in Zhang Zizai's eyes, daylight gradually appeared. He had already seen Xiao Yeling's position. Even though she was still as cold and arrogant as ever, Zhang Zizai didn't have the slightest sympathy in his heart. At this moment, he exploded out everything he had swallowed. At this moment, countless people the changed Dead Knight Demon Sword energy and darkness itself suddenly erupted, like a sword energy beam, stabbing Xiao Yeling suddenly. The power of this attack was beyond everyone's imagination. Xiao Yeling was attacking here. She was vulnerable to a single blow and was blown away. Such a beautiful woman was blown into pitch-black charcoal by Zhang Zizai and hit the ground, temporarily unconscious. Of course, these are just skin injuries. Although she has the sword energy of the Dead Knight Demon Insect, she is actually the master, and the Dead Knight Demon Insect will not eat her. Xiao Yeling could still struggle to stand up, but such an ugly self almost drove her crazy. She looked at Zhang Zizai with blood-red eyes and screamed, "You are dead. No matter how many years you challenge today, you will not be more than 10 years old. God, I'll cut you into pieces." Zhang Zizai was smiling. He was not threatened at all, but said to Dragon Master King Mu, "Palace Master, you heard me, if I die next, just deal with her first." Azurewood Dragon Lord laughed and said, Young man, don't be ridiculous. Victory and defeat are normal things. You need to treat it with a normal heart. Especially you, Xiao yelling. Whatever you do, you must remember your father's teachings. This made Xiao yelling speechless. She could only grit her teeth and look at Zhang Zizai, with murderous intent still in her eyes. But defeat is defeat. The Dragon God King had already unceremoniously ranked her 8th, and Zhang Zizai became the 7th. It was basically difficult for him to come down from the Zilong Tower, because there were not many people who could challenge the top 10 of the Supreme List in the future. It was very difficult to come down from the 7th place. No matter how depressed people were, they had to bear it. Who let the daughter of the Demon Dragon Emperor not stop Zhang Zizai? However, Xiao Yuang, who ranked 2nd on the Supreme List, appeared beside his sister. He looked calm and asked, "Do you want to challenge the 2nd place today?" "No plan." "What a pity," Zhang Zizai said. People can understand that he dare not challenge the 2nd place, but some people will guess what Zhang Zizai's goal will be. Next, he said to King Mulongzun without any hesitation, "Palace Master, I want to challenge the 4th place on the Supreme List next." In his plan, there are 2 more battles. The last one will not be given to the 2nd place Xiao Yuang. As for who will be given it, it is very clear. Anyway, it will not be the 3rd place. Of course, the premise is that he has to defeat the devil-like 4th place on the Supreme List. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 1170. Everyone now knows how daring Zhang Zizai is. This only aroused people's anger and jealousy. They urgently need someone to stand up and suppress Zhang Zizai, otherwise everyone will think that this is a shame for the entire Supreme Dragon clan. Zhang Zizai's daring challenge to the 4th place on the Supreme List is enough to reassure them, because the top 4 on the Supreme List represent another level. From the 10th place Bailey Mufeng to the 7th place Xiao Yeling, there are jumps in levels, not to mention the 4th place on the Supreme List. Each of these characters is a shining genius in the entire Supreme Dragon clan. They are the future reserve of gods, and the top 4 among them have a 70% to 80% chance of becoming gods. Each of them is an absolute pride of the Supreme Dragon clan born in recent years. On the Supreme List, there are 5 descendants of the 4 Dragon Emperors, and their backups are very high. Except for Xiao Yuang and Xiao Yeling, who are ranked 2nd and 7th, the 1st, 3rd, and 4th are all the biological children of the 4 Dragon Emperors, and they have been personally trained by the 4 Dragon Emperors since childhood. Only Xiao Yeling is just a little worse. The 4th on the Supreme List has appeared after Zhang Zizai issued a letter of challenge. Zhang Zizai challenged her not because she was ranked 1st on the beauty list by the disciples of Zilong Academy, but simply because she was ranked 4th on the Supreme List. If he defeated her, Zhang Zizai would be qualified to challenge the 1st on the Supreme List. He was curious, what would the 1st on the beauty list look like? When this person appeared, Zhang Zizai was enlightened. Sure enough, she was more beautiful than Xiao Yeling. Unexpectedly, the 1st on the beauty list was not from the Immortal Dragon clan, but from the Demon Dragon clan. Being ranked 1st means that most people recognize her as the most beautiful in Zilong Academy, while the woman from the Xianlong Tianzi who ranks 3rd on the Supreme List can only be ranked 2nd on the beauty list. Her name is Yun Lingsha. At this time, the woman named Yun Lingsha has already stood on the battle stage. She stands facing Zhang Zizai, with her hands behind her back and a sweet smile. She is wearing a goose yellow short skirt, with round, white, and tender thighs exposed, tall and strong enough to attract all men's eyes, but this is not her most eye-catching part. Looking up, every inch of her body is almost perfect. This is a woman with a temperament very similar to Juxian, soft and lazy, a little quirky, with very bright eyes, and she doesn't feel the shelf of a superior at all. Her every frown and smile is particularly easy to approach, and occasionally as approachable as a girl next door. She was looking at Zhang Zizai and smiling, Her red lips as pink as cherry blossoms were moist, and there was a faint smile on her delicate face. When she smiled, her eyes narrowed into beautiful crescents, which looked very comfortable, cute, and playful, but also charming. Her curvy and exquisite figure had an alluring magic that made it difficult for people to take their eyes off her. Zhang Zizai tasted it and found that she was much more beautiful than the high-ranking Xiao Yeling, at least in terms of comfort. No wonder she could get the most recognition from people. Most of the students in Zilong Academy were men, so she could be ranked first on the beauty list, 3 places higher than her ranking on the supreme list. But what kind of person was she, and whether this smile in front of her was natural or a hidden knife, Zhang Zizai didn't know. Yun Lingsha had seen enough of him. After coming up, she first said, "Zhang Zizai, I'm not that easy to defeat. If you want to move forward, you have to at least get past me. When you start, you'd better be careful. Once I hit you, you won't have a chance." "Thank you, Sister Yun, for reminding me," Zhang Zizai said. His tone was not cold, but not intimate either. After all, he was now the target of public criticism. How could he know that she was talking to him nicely, which was completely opposite to Xiao Yeling's attitude? Was she trying to paralyze him? "Don't call me sister. You've made me old, you bad guy," Yun Lingsha said in a delicate voice. Her voice was very delicate and soft, which made people feel numb. This was of the same nature as her methods. Zhang Zizai knew that she was the most powerful soul in the entire Supreme List, and had the most abundant soul control and attack methods. The Demon Dragon Heavenly Clan was originally good at souls, and she definitely got the essence of the Demon Dragon Emperor. Among the 4 Supreme Dragon clans, the Demon Dragon Clan has some advantages in terms of divine body, the Demon Dragon Clan has advantages in terms of divine soul, the Immortal Dragon Clan is more special in terms of divine source, and the Divine Dragon Clan is relatively balanced, or in other words, all 3 aspects are very good. What should I call? Zhang Zizai was always alert to her methods. She was someone who defeated her opponent by controlling her divine soul, and it was very likely that her attack had already begun. Just call her name. Calling her name now seems closer. Yun Lingsha was like talking to a friend. But do we need to be close? I am very hated now. After all, everyone thinks that the current situation of the Supreme Dragon Clan is my fault, and they also think that I will betray in the future. They also think that I am from the bottom of the small divine domain and am not suitable for any fortune here," Zhang Zizai asked with a smile. He was not in a hurry. He had just experienced 2 battles and was resting and relaxing. A new battle would begin soon. "I don't think the same as these people. It's so cliché and boring. In fact, I think you are quite interesting. As for your origin, I have long understood that the arrogance of status will never belong to you. The future belongs to those with strength. Such people can create their own status, which is a kind of glory. The sense of superiority of blood is just a boring product in the world. I don't bother to care about it. Really interesting people will not stick to these." "I think you are an interesting person," Yun Lingsha said seriously. Zhang Zizai was a little surprised. Outsiders could hear what she said, but he looked at it and found that others didn't react. Maybe they thought this was one of Yun Lingsha's methods, to get closer to Zhang Zizai, let him lose his guard, and then the attack of the soul could be unprepared. Zhang Zizai was too lazy to judge. He smiled and said, "That makes sense, but after all, they are still opponents now, so let the strength gain the respect of the other party. How about it?" It must be said that Yun Lingsha is a special opponent compared with others. Of course it's no problem. Be prepared. If I take action, you won't have many opportunities to make mistakes. Yun Lingsha smiled softly. Her smile and laughter, as well as her cuteness at that moment, all made people feel very comfortable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 1171. Zhang Zizai recalled that he had studied all the beings on his challenge route. For example, Yun Lingsha was a very tough opponent who completely surpassed Xiao Yeling. Her totem, named Zhou Tianfuxian Fantasy Demon Dragon Totem, was the top of the God King totems. Zhou Tianfuxian Fantasy could create Zhou Tianfuxian Dreamland. With her ability, when she reached the God King realm, it was estimated that her totem ability could make everyone in the totem world fall into a deep sleep, or even sleep until death, and easily destroy the entire world. This was a gentle dream, but it had the ability to make people lose all resistance and be at the mercy of others. Feng Xiaoxiao once had a similar ability, but compared with this, it was simply the difference between a grain of rice and the sun, and it was not the same concept at all. Moreover, she is a person with a special totem divine phase, which was given to her by her father, called the demon sound divine phase. As long as her totem divine phase appears, it will always emit a kind of magic sound that makes people fall asleep. This is a dual effect of the fusion with the totem ability, which makes her totem divine phase very terrifying, comparable to Zhang Zizai's forbidden dragon divine phase, so Zhang Zizai's advantage in the totem divine phase will not be too great. Even in the reverse dragon formation, she is enough to defeat the existence of the 6th level of the God King realm. She has a lot of capital, and the God King level totem divine weapon is of course standard. His Chaos Umbrella is also a terrible thing to control the soul. With the totem ability plus the totem divine phase, the demon sound divine phase, and the Chaos Umbrella, she can suppress too many opponents in terms of soul and completely control the opponent. Maybe Zhang Zizai would rather challenge the 3rd and 5th, and is not willing to challenge her, but there is no way. If he challenges the 5th, he has to challenge one more person in the middle to get to the 1st. If he challenges the 3rd, he does not have the qualifications. After all, he can only cross 2 levels, and he is only the 7th now. Yun Lingsha did not intend to use the previous conversation as a starting point. At this moment, she began to attack openly. Behind her, a phantom of a totem god began to appear. It was a dragon shrouded in clouds and mist. When the dragon appeared, it began to emit a gentle dragon roar. This dragon roar was the power of the magic sound god. It sounded like a light chant, like a lullaby, and it sounded very comfortable and could make people happy. But Zhang Zizai, the more this happened, the more dangerous it was. He just stopped for a while and felt drowsy. At this time, her totem god directly dispersed and turned into countless clouds and mists, which began to spread around. This kind of clouds and mists could not be resisted, and even penetrated into Zhang Zizai's platinum bell cover and entered his internal organs, like a poisonous gas. In this cloud and mist, even her appearance became dreamy. Go to sleep, I know you are tired, take a good rest. Her soft dream talk kept echoing in his ears, which sounded comfortable. Zhang Zizai easily relaxed all his guard and fell into her control. At this time, there was an umbrella on his head. Under the shadow of this umbrella, he felt very safe, and even everything around him became soft. Zhang Zizai fell into extreme comfort. He felt that he had not enjoyed it for a long time. Such an experience was really comfortable to the extreme. If there was a beauty serving him at this time, rubbing his shoulders and hammering his legs, it would be the greatest happiness in the world. Such a comfortable and drowsy experience was like a dream. He thought that if Yun Lingsha was not an enemy, he could capture her and make her a maid, hypnotize him every day, and serve her occasionally. It would be perfect. After all, in that case, he would not have to worry about being killed by her when he fell asleep. As for now, if he just fell asleep for comfort, his challenge journey to the Supreme List would probably be over. After feeling comfortable, Zhang Zizai made another attempt. He didn't have to do anything, but directly practiced the Taixi universe soul refining technique. At that moment, he fell directly from heaven to hell. In the endless void, his soul was ground again and again by the huge millstone, and it was ground into fragments and powder. He howled in pain countless times, and it was simply difficult to hold on. He really couldn't hold on, so he stopped practicing, and then found that this Fusion dream was so comfortable, it was simply heaven. It was like taking a hot bath here, making people drowsy, and all the pores on the body were talking about comfort. The beauty massage in Zhang Zizai's imagination also appeared, and the soft little hands kneaded on his body, making people want to shout out in pleasure. But in the next moment, he continued to practice the Taixi universe soul refining technique, and it was so painful that he wanted to die, and he was so awake that he couldn't be more awake. In comparison, Yun Lingsha's method seemed to be nourishing himself, but he was torturing his soul. After being nurtured by Yun Lingsha, his soul became stronger and stronger. This feeling was simply wonderful. He could actually become stronger in battle. So, Zhang Zizai continued to enjoy it. He could clearly feel that Yun Lingsha was constantly increasing the intensity. The magic sound totem and the chaotic umbrella were both used. The degree became more and more terrifying. It was so comfortable that people would fall asleep immediately. Zhang Zizai could only torture himself continuously. Every time he tortured himself, he would be more awake than anyone else, making Yun Lingsha's soul control, which had consumed a lot of strength, powerless. If it were someone else, they would have fallen asleep by now. The whole battle lasted for half an hour, which can be said to be very long. People were speechless. Every time Zhang Zizi was about to fall asleep, he would yell and scream. It felt like he was being tortured. Woke up again, then continued to fall asleep, and then screamed again. In the end, no one could tell whether Yun Lingsha's attack caused him to fall asleep or caused Zhang Zizai to scream. When half an hour was up, Zhang Zizai suddenly felt uncomfortable. It turned out that Yun Lingsha had withdrawn all her attacks. She stood aside, panting and looking at Zhang Zizai, her plump breasts rising and falling, her breasts moving. Looking at Zhang Zizai's eyes, she felt like she wanted to cry without tears. Why did you stop? Keep going. It's not enough yet. This feeling is too comfortable, Zhang Zizai said regretfully. Begging for a fight, you big bad guy, you got an advantage and acted like a good boy, so I ignored you. Yun Lingsha chuckled, then she turned around, walked away, and jumped off the fighting platform. What are you doing? The fight hasn't started yet, Zhang Zizai asked in surprise. I'll hit you on the head. I lose. I won't fight you anymore, you scoundrel. Yun Lingsha turned around and made a face, and walked into the crowd. She was really a breath of fresh air among this group of perverts. Zhang Zizai discovered that she was really good and a good girl, which was really rare. So, now I am fourth on the Supreme list. Finally, I can challenge the Supreme on the Supreme list. That one, the well-deserved number one, the Supreme Legend of the Supreme Dragon Clan. Sorry, the weather has changed. Unfortunately, I caught a cold and a fever today. My brain is a bit burning. I insisted on writing 2 chapters, but I can't write anymore. It was such an eventful time. I'll try my best to cure it tomorrow, thank you for your understanding. Holy Dragon Totem. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 1172. There is no doubt that Zhang Zizai's challenge on the Supreme list has reached the final moment. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Beat the 4th place on the Supreme list, he has already created history. But many people find it difficult to accept this way of deciding the winner. Yun Lingsha is too casual, she doesn't seem to have put in any effort, she just handed over the 4th place on the Supreme list to Zhang Zizai. Yeah, she wasn't injured at all, it's like she deliberately lost to Zhang Zizai. Are you kidding? The 4th and 7th places on the Supreme list are two completely different positions in the Ancestral Dragon Tower. Although Yun Lingsha only dropped to the 5th place, do you think she, who is used to the 7th floor of the Ancestral Dragon Tower, can get used to practicing on the 6th floor of the Ancestral Dragon Tower? Anyway, there are all kinds of people talking. Generally speaking, those with a slightly higher realm basically know that Yun Lingsha basically has no other way. So those dragon worshippers will not say anything at first. Most people could only curse at this, but they didn't dare to express their dissatisfaction with Yun Lingsha too loudly. There is only one thing that is certain, that is, many people are not very willing to let Zhang Zizai get the 4th place on the Supreme list. The 4th place on the Supreme list means that he will plunder a lot of resources from the Zilong Academy. However, this is already in the past, and more people know that this can no longer be entangled. What needs more attention now is that Zhang Zizai has been unstoppable all the way. Is it possible that he will not go to the last step? He can only challenge 3 people now, and each of them is unimaginable to him. He said before that he would not challenge Xuanhuan, who is the 2nd on the Supreme list, which means that he may choose between the 1st and the 3rd. With his arrogant personality, how can he be the 3rd? Almost everyone knows that challenging the 3rd place is meaningless to Zhang Zizai. He started from the rules, from the 10th place to the 7th place, and then to the 4th place, which shows that his ultimate goal is to be the 1st in terms of respect and inferiority. Because every step he takes is to cross the limit of the challenge rules of the Supreme list. When his name appeared in the 4th place of the Supreme list, King Mulongzun smiled and asked him, "It is not easy to challenge here. Since we started to evaluate the ranking of the Supreme list, you can be said to be the biggest surprise. Now that we have come to this step, you can tell me directly. Next, who do you want to challenge?" The challenge rule of the top 10 of the Supreme list is to stop at the losing game. Zhang Zizai has never lost, which means that it is impossible for him to stop. Under King Mulongzun's question, everyone looked at Zhang Zizai with fiery eyes. Is he really so bold? It's okay, let him challenge, so that today's matter will have an end. Otherwise, if he is let go, it will be a big loss. Yes, someone has to come out to teach him a lesson. In addition to the 1st place on the Supreme list, is there any other more reliable person? The answer, of course, is no. Even Zhang Zizai himself knows how mythical this number 1 on the Supreme list is. His birth is the luck of the Supreme Dragon clan, and it is also the continuation of the inheritance of the Shenlongtian clan and the inheritance of the Great Mission. He is the son of the Shenlongtiandi as the leader of the 4 Dragon Emperors. The youngest son of Shenlongtiandi ranks 1st on the Supreme list, which is not unexpected. Unexpectedly, he is the most peculiar one in the entire Supreme list. When Zhang Zizai first got the information of the top 10 on the Supreme list, he must have looked at the information of the 1st on the Supreme list first. He wanted to know where the upper limit of the Supreme list was. As a result, he never expected that the age of the 1st on the Supreme list he saw was only a little older than him, with almost no age difference, and his realm was also the 5th level of the God Lord, which was the most ordinary part of his realm. And everything else about him was quite extraordinary. So much so that no one in the entire Supreme list could defeat him at his age. His capital was so strong that it was enough to make people tremble. According to the estimates of the elders, the probability of him becoming a god in the end was 90%, that is, he was basically certain to become a generation of dragon lords and immortal. Zhang Zizai did not disappoint people. At the most tense and exciting moment of the Supreme Hidden Dragon battlefield, he said, "My purpose of coming here is to become the number 1 on the Supreme list." This sentence has been made very clear. Next, he will challenge the number 1 on the Supreme list. "Do you need to rest?" King Mulongzun asked. After all, the previous battle consumed him to a certain extent. It would definitely be unfair to him to continue fighting now. "No, "There is no need to waste everyone's time," Zhang Zizai said. "It has been confirmed." But Zhang Zizai's audacity still looks so arrogant and brainless in their eyes. This person has too low a vision. He doesn't know that there is always someone higher than him. Just watch, it's time to reach the limit. Nonsense, who is he facing? That's Jin Yushin, how can he be lucky? If I were to say, the battle between him and Yun Lingxia just now was a bit inexplicable. He doesn't deserve the 4th place on the supreme list. Jin Yushin's legend has never been broken since he was born. He has always been the only one who broke other people's legends. This genius with the purest bloodline in the entire Zilong Academy has never been able to show his true ability. It is said that those who are much higher than him can't take any advantage of him. He shouldn't come today. Yes, Jin Yushin didn't come, because no one would have thought that Zhang Zizai would challenge the number 1 on the supreme list. But I guess King Mulongzun should have asked the Qin family's dragon priest to bring him here. After all, the Qin family of the Shen Longtianzu is the number 1 family of the Shen Longtianzu. King Mulongzun has to be polite to them. Zhang Zizai also heard these people talking, and then he knew that the number 1 on the supreme list was not here. No wonder he hadn't come up yet. But it doesn't matter, he has plenty of time to wait. In fact, regarding Qin Yushin, the heavenly dragon god king and Zhang Zizai briefly talked about it. The main point of his conversation was, he believed that with Zhang Zizai's level, he could challenge the 2nd place on the supreme list with a relatively high chance of winning, but he did not recommend Zhang Zizai to challenge the 1st place on the supreme list directly, because he believed that Zhang Zizai's chance of winning might only be 10%. The heavenly dragon god king's judgment was very accurate, and Zhang Zizai believed in this, and he had his reasons. He suggested that Zhang Zizai first take the 9th floor of the Zilong Tower, which was second only to the 10th floor, and he could challenge the 10th floor in the future.